earlier this week, he announced the first publicly operated grocery store, which was a big campaign promise for him. And this is a really big undertaking. And I think some people probably thought it was just rhetoric, but he is actually implementing it because there are so many neighborhoods in New York that don't have a grocery store. And, that is a huge problem for people who are facing this massive affordability crisis in the country. So I know you've done some reporting on this. Talk to us about what this is going to look like in practice.
Absolutely. So earlier this week, I traveled up to the South Bronx. And it's very interesting. The location that he chose was a former juvenile detention center. So it's really a reclamation of a place with, a dark, sad history, bringing something that is positive to a community that really needs it. The Bronx in particular is really underserved. By and large, it is considered a food desert, although, so much of the resources of that neighborhood is extrapolated elsewhere, right? Like they feed the rest of the city, but by and large, that borough is underserved. And so I think, Zoran actually delivering on that promise, announcing that he's going to, open the first city-run grocery store in the most underserved borough of New York City is genuinely super heartening. And it was a pleasure to cover. And, this is, of course, like the first of 5 that he's going to unveil across the city. And, it's very interesting. So in practice, of course, that's going to be powered by unions. Unions were very well represented at, the announcement, because according to Mamdani, he said in his remarks that unions are one of the strongest solutions to addressing inequality that working people face. So it's going to be powered by union power. And of course, it's going to be funded again by public funds, which is why the relationship between Zoran and Governor Hochul is so vital, right, in getting this agenda across. It's just one of many examples of Mamdani and his vision to serve the people of New York, serve everyday New Yorkers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to watch. It opens in 2027.
So much of what you have to do as a mayor, as a local official is, taking care of just those bread and butter issues for your constituents. And, we all saw him get out there, with a snow shovel when New York was hit by, a huge snowstorm. He's talked a lot about fixing the roads. And that's the kind of thing that you hear from politicians, across the spectrum in the Democratic Party, at least, moderates, progressives, everybody needs to try and, make sure that we can all get to work one way or another. But what seems to distinguish Zoran from a lot of politicians is he has kind of learned the lesson, maybe something that Trump has mastered, that you can't just do good. You can't just implement policies. You need to tell people how you're doing it. You need to basically sell them on it. And that's something that I think former President Biden did not do very effectively with things like, the IRA. And a lot of people, may have benefited, but they didn't know that money was coming from the government. Maybe they thought that it was the Republican congressman who took credit for it. And, he was the one who was delivering those jobs in the district and fixing the roads. So you talk with us because, I think you can reduce it down to like, look, Zoran's really good on Instagram and TikTok, and that, sure, he has charisma, but he seems to have tapped into something that would be really beneficial for Democrats across the country to really connect with people.
Yeah, absolutely. His, like you alluded to, his social strategy has been very effective. I think the candid nature of his delivery, right, his message is very approachable, and it gets people who wouldn't otherwise be maybe civically engaged to listen. And that is very resonant with Courier Newsroom's mission as well, right? We aim to explain to everyday people why you should pay attention to policy, why you should pay attention to who represents you in Albany, right? Because those are the people who vote on your rent. Those are the people who vote on your schools. And Zoran has been, delivering that repeatedly on the campaign trail, right? Freeze the rent, fast and free buses, right? He's doing that translation work for everyday New Yorkers. And I think that is the piece of the puzzle that makes his technique so successful and so effective, because I think jargon can be lost on everyday working people who might not be as plugged in. They might not be reading city and state. They might not understand what policy looks like, and he's making them less abstract and making them real for people. And I think that's why his campaign has been so resonant. And also, like you alluded to, he's filling 100,000 potholes in his first 100 days. I mean, he's really delivering on those things and making politics a real tangible reality for people to understand.